they want to have 80 guns in the basement to kill squirrels. I wouldn't kill a squirrel anyway, but I think you don't need a machine gun to do that.
Right.
Okay.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the weekly show. Today's episode, of course, with our fabulous producers, Brittany Mehmetovic and Lauren Walker. What a shitty week in America.
Unbelievable.
That feeling of fear and disorientation, and you feel it in your soul, in your bones, in your nerves, in your skin, that sense of dread and fear and doom. And how did you guys experience the attempted assassination? Were you watching TV when it happened? Were you somewhere else? What happened?
I was at a pool party, but
Lauren, well, first of all, let's get into you're at a pool party.
yes,
All
I was
right,
at a pool party, and something that really struck me was I saw the news, and objectively it's shocking and it's like world changing, but
Yeah.
my inside wasn't reacting that way, and all I could think was, is this like the desensitization of like the January 6th of it all, or the mass shooting every day of it all?
Oh, that's so interesting. Like, did you feel like, because it is like when you live in New York City and you see something stark with poverty, right? When you first go there and you'll see a person clearly struggling in distress and on the street, and your first instinct is like, holy, is anybody seeing this? And then you live there for 3 weeks and you're like, and you just walk past it. Do you think it's that kind of mechanism?
Yeah, that was my first thought is, wow, we are in a slow boil because this is not shocking my system right now.
Did that change as you reflected on it, as you talked to people, as you...
Oh, yeah. Like, I think as I started sitting with all of the ramifications of such a big event, such like a leader of our country, like it's huge. And yet my system was not reacting. And
Right.
That was my takeaway.
And it was numbing. Brittany?
I had slightly the opposite reaction. I immediately
Panic.
Yeah, and I immediately jumped into like logistic mode of like, wait, how does this happen? Like, how could this be? Like, I just was refreshing to try and like, I feel like I became a detective and like obsessed with the maps and how.
That's where I was. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was actually texting Jillian, who works with us, just being like, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And I just kept honestly, I spiraled.
I think the part for me that was so shocking is you just figure, well, it's Donald Trump, it's the Secret Service, it's all that, like, it's the most protected zone that can be.
Yes, he is surrounded by good guys with guns. And that was the other place, like, my head immediately went. I'm like, if he can't be protected by guns, how am I supposed to feel safe? And it just, then my head went into like the gun regulation conversation. And I just, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just thinking about all the people who, especially in recent years, have borne the brunt of this threatening language, the death threats, and it's...
Oh God, imagine being
poll workers, and they're not going to be protected.
No.
This could have been, it was a trap. I felt so bad that, I don't know if you saw the one gentleman who lost his life, a fire chief named Corey, I think Comparator, and his family. You just feel so awful for them, but then you also feel like, boy, this could have been so much worse.
Yes.
Just so much worse. But damn.
It's heartbreaking.
You guys feeling a little more grounded now as time has passed a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's new wonders awaiting us.
Lauren, when's the next pool party? And
not soon enough.
All right. Everybody loves a pool party. All right, let me go. We'll talk to Mr. O'Reilly, and then we'll come back. All right, folks. We are joined once again by Mr. Bill O'Reilly. We had a discussion last night on The Daily Show about rhetoric, about the tenor of rhetoric, the temperature of rhetoric, how this country can move past this divisive moment. And we settled on, if I may, Bill, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, just how poorly thought out your position had been. And you acknowledged it. You felt terrible, which I understand. And then we moved on. And I thought we gave a lesson to the country in how,
Yeah, the only drawback of the chat was that you were on LSD, which is now manifesting
Is that
itself.
Is that the last drug that you heard of from the 60s?
I'm not really in the drug market other than Advil, which I took right before I came on this podcast. But
That's
anyway, your encapsulation, when you're taking psychedelics, that happens.
All right.
But the main point that I think we both agree on is that you can have robust political debate without trying to destroy, and I mean that literally, the person you disagree with. I mean, and the problem is in America, a lot of people make a lot of money doing that.
Sure.
And the corporation
you and I
behind that.
Well, I mean, look, the algorithms are different. The internet is different. I think you found in that event, the terrible assassination attempt, you saw that people didn't turn anymore, even to the news media, to the 24 hours. They're really glued to Twitter. They're really glued to social media to find out. And that's the Wild West. I mean, the information that is coming out of there is unvetted. I don't know if you saw, there was a time a little bit after the incident had occurred where I was convinced that the shooter was a gentleman wearing a gray cap with dark eyes, and all these posts kept coming up that this was the shooter. Well, it turned out it was spam. It was an Italian football commentator. And for a half hour, an hour, that's just out there as this is the shooter. I mean, it was wild.
I don't live in that world. I very rarely go to the social media sites for anything. I'm a very traditional, old school.
Sure. You have your MySpace page and your Friendster account, and you just move on. Understood.
Traditional, old school, elderly man. That's me.
Yes.
Unlike the president, though, I have complete control over my faculties.
You were talking about Biden.
Yeah.
Good slam.
When
I
see,
nicely done.
And I get this mail too.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a letter this morning about now the Secret Service wanted this to happen. Okay. And it was a
conspiratorial stuff.
Right. False flag. They set Trump up for the shot. The Secret Service did.
Wow.
Now, I replied to the man.
Wait, someone sent you someone sent you an email saying, hey, Bill.
Viewer mail. We get thousands of
viewer
mails.
Okay.
All over the world.
I get it.
Okay. So I sent this guy back. I said, look, I did 4 shows with Donald Trump, the history tour. All right. Big arena shows. And they were produced by my production company. It was like the Rumble in the air-conditioned auditorium with you and me 12 years ago. And I had to deal with the Secret Service because I'm the head of the production company. I'm going to tell you, those people are deadly serious in what they do and would never buy into any kind of conspiracy at all. What happened there, and what is the main point of all this, is that the leadership of the Secret Service is incompetent, and they're all going to be fired. It's just a matter of when. All right. The director, Kimberly Cheadle, and then the people who set up the perimeter that allowed a clear shot into the platform, they're all going to be demoted.
Is there do you have any qualms as you think about this, about the idea that a 20-year-old kid, clearly having mental issues, was able to walk around with an AR-15? I mean, until he set up and pulled that trigger, he wasn't doing anything illegal. Does this at least give you pause about the kind of weapons that American citizens without any real oversight are allowed to walk around with that can take out somebody from 150 yards away and can do it with somebody who's apparently a terrible shot?
The answer to your question is yes. Do I have qualms about it? Yes. Would I slap?
Look at us.
Would I slap?
Bill O'Reilly wants gun. Bill O'Reilly wants to take your guns.
Not about a gun control. It's a matter of public safety.
Right.
All right. So each state, according to our Constitution, has the right to regulate what laws it wants to make about guns. Now, the left, your folks,
No, the Supreme Court, the Washington, D.C. had a law that you couldn't bring in handguns and it got struck down.
Right, ruled it unconstitutional. Okay,
Right.
because
so you're not allowed to state by state make your laws.
No, you are.
You couldn't ban them.
All right, let me give you a civics lesson. Every state and every district can make its own laws, but if the Supreme Court deems those laws unconstitutional, they get thrown out.
Ain't that the rub?
Okay.
Yeah.
The left wants the laws about guns to be made from Washington, one central law for the whole country. The right does not want that, claiming there are different circumstances in New York City than there are in Casper, Wyoming. And you don't have that. Now, for me...
I think that's a very broad generalization, Bill, that doesn't quite tax. So here's what I would say. Let's use the immigration argument, right? So Republicans are very concerned that we have open borders. Well, in New York City, we're concerned that Florida's open borders are allowing what's called the iron pipeline. They're allowing guns that aren't being traced and are illegal to flow into New York City. I don't think what people who are concerned about guns are saying is the federal government has to do it and everything's equal. I think what they're saying is give us the tools to not allow this chaos in our streets.
Okay.
And help us. That's all they're saying.
I have a fairly good solution to the gun crime problem in the United States. Would you like to hear it?
I would like to hear it.
All right. Number one, every state should have very stringent regulations on military style weaponry, like the ARs. Every state. So in order to get that, you have to prove
so
you're
voting for Joe Biden and the Democrats this cycle because of how intensely you feel. Because they had that in place, and I believe it got
wasn't
repealed.
That simple. Wasn't that simple?
Okay. It's never that simple, is it?
Every state, Stewart, should require that the person seeking the military style rifle justify it, and then the state makes a decision.
Justify it with like an essay?
Yeah. Write a little essay.
Dear Maryland.
It could maybe multiple choice. Are you
dear
a
Maryland,
loon?
I am surrounded by angry deer. And if I don't have an AR and an
you don't want to hear the solution to this.
I've been corrected by my staff. The assault weapons ban it wasn't repealed. It expired.
Okay.
I just
want everybody watching worldwide. I want the people in Kazakhstan to know that Stewart doesn't want to hear the solution to the gun violence.
I do want to hear the solution. Bring it.
Then button it. Every state has a very stringent process in which to get an AR, number one. Number two, all gun crimes, all crimes committed with a firearm of any kind immediately become federal crimes. That's because in New York City, you can commit a gun crime and not even be held on bail. Okay? That's insane. So it becomes a federal beef.
I was under the impression that a gun crime, that they could still do danger to the community, no? Or is that's you're even not allowed to hold them on bail?
No, of course.
Can't you do danger to the community?
But in New York, the no bail law, you can be carrying a firearm and have a felony on your record, and they'll let you go. You'll be prosecuted down the road.
They can let you go, or they must let you go.
Absolutely.
They can, but that's not required. They can hold you in terms of if they deem you a danger.
Discretion.
Judge's discretion.
If you know what it is in Manhattan. Okay. So all gun crimes are federal crimes. So you go into a bodega with a gun.
All right.
That's not a local crime anymore. That's federal
crime.
Okay.
Right.
Then there are mandatory prison sentences upon conviction. So first conviction, crime with a gun, 5. Second conviction, 10. Okay? That way, the few...
You're tightening the penalties and you're tightening the restrictions.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you're not going to solve the whole gun crime. The nut in Pennsylvania will still get the AR because the black market for those guns is not going to cease. It's just like the black market for narcotics. But society is doing its best to protect people. And there you have it, Stewart.
And that solves it. Well, let me poke a few little things in there. It is, in fact, your side that would make it impossible to make those stricter regulations. Those have been tried. I mean, after Sandy Hook, people tried desperately to enact some of those policies, and there was only one side that was fighting it, and that was the Republicans. They've made it more difficult to track these weapons. They've made it impossible to sue gun dealerships that are known to be selling them to traffickers and bringing them up. You know, we talk about the violence south of the border in Mexico. Most of those guns come from America. So this gun problem that you've very, I think, helpfully for America set out some of those things. They've neutered the agencies federally. There can be no registration. Why is it that that is so resisted by the right?
Okay. Number one, I don't have a side. All right.
Stop
I'm not a
saying
Republican.
that.
I
Oh
don't
my
have a
God.
side. I'm
All
not an
right.
NRA member.
I don't see color.
I'm none of
I
that.
don't have sides. I
I'm
am
a
an
free
amorphous
thinker
blob. I
and a
don't taste
problem
food.
solver.
I don't listen to music.
No, I sit in a room, no music, solving problems,
Solving
and then
problems
trying to
neutrally.
convince people like you to listen to me. That's
All
my
right.
life, as sad
All
as
right.
it is. So you
getting
are
sadder.
absolutely right that conservative gun people
Yes.
don't want any restriction
That's
because
right.
they're selfish. They want to have 80 guns in the basement to kill squirrels. I wouldn't kill a squirrel anyway, but I think you don't need a machine gun to do that.
Right.
Okay. So that's not my side. What I'm appealing to is the majority of Americans who are good people.
Overwhelming
Right.
majority of Americans. I mean,
to
not having gun restrictions may be one of the most anti-democratic things that we have in our government. Not
But
being
it's
able to
not-
enact.
You're
Yeah.
using a word restrictions. Yes, but the
Or regulations. What would you rather have me say?
standards.
Okay.
So if you want a heavy weapon, you got to show
You
the
have a higher
government-
bar that you have
Right.
to pass.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But
I just want to get control of the chaos. I talked to a guy, I don't know, it was maybe 2 years ago. He's a state senator in Oklahoma, and he said, more guns, more safety. I said, well, when does that happen? I said, you know, he was passing laws in Oklahoma that would make it so that you didn't have to take gun safety courses to get a gun. And I said, well, do gun safety courses make us safer? And he said, yes. And I said, you want to take that out of making people do it? Yes. So that makes us less safe? No.
okay.
Well, it
But-
doesn't even have any logic to it.
If you understand the world as I do, okay.
Oh, Jesus
The
Christ.
societies that don't have gun problems
Yes,
are the
don't have
societies
guns.
where the punishment for
Wow.
violating the gun laws is heinous. So Russia's
stop.
like,
Okay.
no, listen to me.
What about Australia?
We'll get to Australia.
All right.
Australia's confusing because of the kangaroos. They're transporting guns in their
They're
pouches.
not armed.
You didn't
Yes.
know that.
I did
But
not
in
know
Russia, if you have a gun, all right, you go away to a gulag for about 20 years.
that. So I'm going to explain something about Russia, and you may not be aware of this. It is an authoritarian state. It's
That's
an
right.
autocracy. Oh,
But-
which can I? Let me switch gears for a second because this is fascinating. But I want to get to something else.
Yes.
I am so fascinated, Mr. O'Reilly, by the patriotic fervor of the Republican Party, of the Republican conventions, the iconography of the flags, the "We the People" of the Constitution. We are for freedom. We are for liberty. What is their acceptance of Viktor Orban and Vladimir Putin? What is their? I don't understand.
I don't understand
how
it
you
either.
can say we stand for freedom, we stand for liberty, we stand for the Constitution, and man, you know who's doing it right? Putin and Orban. Those are illiberal autocrats. What are we talking about here?
Well, we didn't get to it on the Daily Show because you were babbling so much.
That's what I do. That's my
I understand
calling
that.
card.
But J.D. Vance is the biggest Putin enabler I've seen.
But
J.D. Vance, and I actually
what
use
is the
this.
rationale? I truly want to understand.
Let me explain it. So
Please.
J.D. Vance, I used a soundbite on the No Spin News, which is my daily broadcast, BillO'Reilly.com. You can get it all. So I use a soundbite of J.D. Vance, Senator Vance, saying, hey, Putin, he's not Hitler. All right, he's not a threat. United States is much stronger than it was in 1938. And I'm going, wait, I believe Putin has nuclear weapons. So anyway, Vance misreads history. All right, he doesn't understand the danger of Putin.
He only went to Yale, so what, you know.
Well, it was Yale Law School, which is really not going to school. It's kind of like all you do is demonstrate and make little signs.
Is that? I didn't realize that. It's just a commune.
I can say that because I went to Harvard. All right, so I understand what's going on.
You went to Harvard? Was that a DEI initiative for Irish guys?
That was we have to admit him because he's so brilliant, but we don't want to. We don't want to.
Fair enough.
Okay, so your question is, why are some of the fringe right so enamored with Putin?
Not fringe right. The vice presidential candidate of the United States, the presidential candidate of the United States on the Republican Party, that's not fringe.
No, Trump does not subscribe to that. We don't know what Trump, he won't say what his Ukraine policy is, which tees me off because I don't know where he's coming in there.
He has very clearly shown an affinity for the types of strong men and authoritarian leaders like Vladimir Putin, like Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban was down at Mar-a-Lago having a shrimp cocktail, talking about, here's what you got to do with the press. Here's what you got to do with the thing. I mean, how can you say
this is why you don't understand Trump? So I wrote a book, The United States of Trump, which you did not read, but you desperately need to read it.
I'm waiting for the movie to come out. I'm sure it's going to be fascinating.
Right. And I'm sure Rob Reiner will direct it.
Yes, absolutely.
Trump doesn't care about ideology. He doesn't care about Viktor Orban. He doesn't even know where Hungary is. Okay, he hasn't been to Budapest. What Trump wants are deals. And his theory is, if I can be friendly to Putin, to the nut in North Korea, Xi not so much. They're not close. But if I can be friendly and convince these people not to cause trouble, that's better for the country. Now, during 4 years...
Can I ask a question then? Then why is he so harsh to our allies? Why is he so solicitous to Putin and
because he
our
wants
enemies?
NATO to pay the money for defense purposes. That's why. He's not harsh to them.
But they
wants them to pay up.
His rhetoric towards France versus his rhetoric towards Russia is stark. There's a stark difference in the way that he talks about the European.
It's a different agenda. He wants
So you're saying you use a stick on your friends and a carrot on your enemies. Is that the theory?
He's just a deal maker. Okay? That's all. And that's why people misrepresent him. They think he's this onus Barry Goldwater guy. All right, Trump. He doesn't care about it. He doesn't know basically what conservatives
values
like that.
He has no principles.
His values are this. I am the best deal maker on earth. This is what Donald Trump believes. And my deals have helped America. And he can trot out deals that he has made because Putin didn't misbehave for 4 years. He didn't.
That's just not, I mean, not invade. He didn't leave Crimea. We didn't get anything from him.
No,
I don't understand this idea
Crimea, that's not a deal. That happened under Obama. Okay, he took Crimea under Obama. He didn't take a shred of territory under Trump.
Isn't this a bit of narcissism on America to think that the only things that happen are controlled by whatever personality is in the White House at that time? I mean, I think that is a little far-fetched and a little bit solipsistic to think that in America, Putin said, hey, man, Trump's in. I don't want any smoke from that guy, so I'm not going to do anything wrong in the world. It's just not the case. He was still enabling Iran. He was still allowing proxy armies all throughout the Middle East. He was still undermining U.S. interests in the Levant. Like, the idea that Putin behaved when Trump was in office is a fiction.
Okay. That is your opinion, but if you look at the scale measure
Oh,
of
okay.
what Putin did when Trump was in office and what he's done under Biden, it's not even the same hemisphere. But okay, you can have, look, that's the beauty of America. We all have different opinions. But Trump
Mhm.
manages his political empire by deal making, not
But do you
ideology.
understand, Bill? His record at managing even his financial empire is unbelievably spotty. The one
Okay.
thing that he does really well
Yeah.
is tell stories that he's the best, he's the most impressive this, that, ever, that. Like, that's what he does well. His business record is oftentimes abysmal. There's a lot of bankruptcies in there. There's corruption in there. There's charities that have been shut down. Like, this is a fantasy that he's created this deal-making empire that never goes south.
All I'm doing is 4 years of his administration. When you read Confronting the Presidents, and I'm going to hire somebody to read it to you, to follow you
Right.
around. And I hope after it comes out September 10th, we can discuss it. Every single president, all 45 men, all right, had chaos in their lives. Every one. George Washington's mother hated him. He didn't go to her funeral.
What does that have to do with you running on your deal making and business
Because what
acumen
you're doing
and going
is
bankrupt in a casino?
What you're doing is you're saying Trump has run his business poorly. All right, that's an opinion. The guy has an enormous amount of money. He has an enormous amount of money.
Started out good
and
and went well.
property.
I'm not saying he ran his businesses poorly. What I'm saying is he cottons no criticism, no idea that anything had ever been. His rhetoric is always,
I'm the greatest. He's like
I'm the
Muhammad
greatest,
Ali.
and this is the worst.
I'm the greatest.
And
Of
what
course.
I'm saying is it's a fiction, and it's clearly a fiction.
But they all are fictional characters. Biden's going out there going, I'm the best president since FDR. And I don't know about you, but Dwight Eisenhower appeared to me in a vision and said, did he really say that? And Ronald Reagan went, there you go again.
Let's be fair.
Come on.
Joe Biden did pass a tremendous amount of legislation.
Not as much as Trump. Trump passed more legislation than Biden. And Biden's on there going, I passed more legislation than anybody else. We did a fact check, and Trump passed more.
Trump had two things. He had two chances. Lock her up, build a wall. Didn't do either. Now, as far as passing more legislation that was consequential, he couldn't get an infrastructure bill done. He couldn't. He tried very hard to do that.
He never did. He didn't use union labor. That was a problem.
He told us, terrible. He told us that we were going to have a health care bill that would be second to none. You'll see, I'm going to replace Obamacare, and we're going to have a health care bill that he didn't do any of it.
No.
Here's what he did. A $1.7 trillion tax cut.
Yes.
Right? He got the corporate tax rate to 20%, and he was able to deregulate.
Yes. All that's accurate.
Right. And even out of that, even as a businessman, you have to admit, that's probably worth, what, $5 trillion in stimulus?
Look.
And he got a GDP rate out of that.
Macroeconomics is swell. All right? I'm a simple man, you know that. I'm looking out for the folks.
In which version are you? I just want a definition of simple, because my definition of you as a simple man is probably different than yours.
Here's why I'm simple. I don't understand anything you just said in the last 2 minutes.
You're simple because you don't understand.
Right. Under Trump, real wages went up close to 8% for the folks. Under Biden, real wages are down 2.5%. That means
wait.
Yeah. That means the average working person is down 10% in take-home pay under Biden. So come on. You can go macroeconomic all day long. People got to go to Piggly Wiggly to get their groceries. Stop it.
Okay, well, let's go simple folk. Donald Trump was the first president since Herbert Hoover to walk out of office with net job loss. First person since Hoover.
Because of COVID, they shut everything down.
So, I see. So Donald Trump is allowed to say, I was $8 trillion. I accumulated $8 trillion to the national debt. Right?
COVID related.
And I left office with a net job loss, and that's COVID. But Biden, in getting the economy to recover in the way that it did, probably faster than any other industrialized country in the world, with an inflation rate that was lower than the other industrialized countries. But that's nothing. He sucks.
Look,
but Trump was great and COVID ruined it. And Biden, COVID didn't matter and he sucks. That doesn't make sense, Bill.
number one, the American economy is good under Biden.
So what are you
Inflation
talking
is
about?
not. So look, there are two lines. What was that
Yes.
word I want? Two lines.
All right. Two
the
lines.
stock market doing well, the economy, consumers are spending, people are okay employment-wise. But Stewart, since Biden's been in office, gas prices are up 38%. I know you don't want to hear it. I know this is painful.
But so here's all I'm asking you.
Food prices
Why
up
is it
21%.
when I say Donald
Come
Trump
on.
was a net job loss and added $8 trillion to our national debt,
Right.
you say, well, that was COVID.
That's right.
Even though it wasn't COVID, it was a $1.7 trillion tax cut that never paid for itself. It was a 20% corporate tax rate. These things, it's trickle down economics.
No. If you look at before the government shut down on COVID, if you look at tax receipts, and I am not sticking up for Trump, he's way too big a spender for me. Way too big. Okay? And Biden is the same. They're both the same parallel. I'm going to buy votes by spending money. That's what they do. All right.
Well, then why hasn't Biden added as much to the debt as Trump did?
It's close. The stats
It's not
are
close.
Yes, it is.
I think it's 8 trillion to 4
close.
trillion. 8 to 4 or 5.
But
it's not close. It's like half.
the 8 trillion comes in the deal for the vaccines and all of the things that Trump had to do to keep the country not falling over.
I see.
Do you know how much
so
that
Biden,
cost the federal government to have those 3 pharmaceutical companies develop that vaccine in less than a year? That was $2.5 trillion. Just that. Come on.
I'm going to have to check your figures, Bill, because you're
Just
saying the government spent $2.5
Pfizer
trillion.
And Moderna, and they'll tell you.
You're saying the federal government spent
they made
$2.5 trillion
with 3 pharmaceutical companies based upon them developing a vaccine in a certain amount of time.
And you don't think any of the spending Biden did was because of COVID? That was just spending.
Some of it was, look, Biden puts it up like the Build Back America Better, all right, as a COVID play.
Infrastructure.
Yeah. And I don't have a beef with that in the sense that, we needed an infrastructure upgrade in this country. But macroeconomics comes down
why
to
didn't Trump do that? If he's such a deal maker, why didn't he do it? Why didn't he do remember Infrastructure Week? They had like 50 infrastructure weeks. Why didn't he do it?
I don't know why he did it, why he didn't do it. All I know is for the last 2 years of the Trump administration, they were desperately trying to handle this COVID, which Biden inherited.
Not the last 2 years. It was the last like 8 months.
No, it was longer
when
than
COVID
that.
hit in March.
They shut the government down in March, but it was before that it started to come in. The pandemic started to come in. All right. So
not much
the
before
timeline is probably tighter. You're right there. Timeline is probably tighter.
It's like 8 months, I think.
The catastrophe of shutting the entire country down had ramifications for every part of it. But when Biden came in, remember when Trump left office, inflation was 1.5%.
Because the economy was shut down.
No, they were coming back then. They were coming back then. The economy wasn't totally shut down then. Oh, yeah, they were.
All right.
When we voted in 20, people were back to work. A lot of them were remotely. A lot of them.
I just love how you look at COVID. You look at COVID as this terrible challenge that Trump had to face, and that he had it all figured out by the time Biden walked in, and he didn't have to do anything.
I had it all figured out. I'm just trying to tell you what the government's responsibility was at the time. I'm a historian.
That's right.
You want to paint me as some kind of Trump booster, okay? That's what you want to paint me as, and I'm not that.
More sycophant, not booster.
I think Biden is the second worst president in our history, next to James Buchanan, and you'll learn all about Jimmy when you read Confronting the Presidents. Because Biden...
That is a wild statement. Yeah.
Because
That's a
Biden
wild
caused
statement.
problems. Open border, that's Biden. That's not Congress. That's not anybody. It's an executive order on Biden's part to open that border for anybody who wants to apply for asylum. That has been a catastrophe across the board. Biden created that.
I am not going to say that our immigration policy makes any sense whatsoever, has anything.
It's on him 100%.
No, I disagree
Well,
with
who
that.
else?
I don't think.
Who else, Stewart?
Well, what I would suggest is that through a lot of factors, there's a lot more people that are migrating all over the world. Like the whole world is having trouble dealing with immigration and migrants caused by chaos and unrest in the world. That's just a fact. There's more people coming through. Allowing asylum for people is also international law. So that's something that we don't really have a choice in.
No, it's
asylum
not international
seekers are protected
law.
in international law.
No, each country has its own asylum laws. You're not forced. Who's going to force you to have an asylum law? You think?
Understood.
Wait. You think communist China has an asylum law?
Oh, well,
there's no international law on asylum.
In the countries that follow the rule of law. And again, going to autocracies and dictatorships, of course, they play by different rules. But our point is, in America, we have asylum-seeking laws. That's just what we have. Now,
which were broken by the Biden open border policy.
They had a legislative fix for that the Republicans wouldn't do because Donald Trump...
Because the bill wouldn't have done anything. I read the bill.
That's not true.
I want the border to be secure. That wouldn't have secured the border.
A conservative legislature. I have
the solution to the border.
The immigration... Oh, my God. The Border Patrol were for the bill. Everybody was for the bill except Trump because he thought it would take away an election.
No. Everybody wasn't for the bill. I wasn't for the bill, and I didn't care what Trump said about it.
Let me hear. What's your solution?
Okay. All asylum claims are suspended for a year by the United States so we can reorganize the asylum courts, hire more judges, hire more Border Patrol, build more barriers. 1 year, no asylum claims. That stops the cartel human smuggling operations right there. The people that are in here, already, about 15 million foreign nationals, they need to register at their local post office, and each one of them are adjudicated within our law system. Remember, if you come to the United States, even illegally, you are protected by our Constitution. So now everybody here has to get due process, and they should.
Right.
But the government has to know who's here, where they are, and what they are doing. And that way they can get a fair hearing. And so if you stop the asylum for a year, give Congress time to pass a decent immigration law and stop the chaos, that's how you do it. And that's a brilliant solution, and you know it. So let's admit it in front of the world right now.
First of all, if you believe this podcast is in front of the world, you are so grossly
overstating. It is that I'm on it.
You are so grossly overstating my reach.
I'm everywhere.
Let's not. Well, people aren't happy about it, Bill. I'll tell you that much. That's for damn sure.
Freedom of speech.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Do you understand why people in America, not everyone, fear another Trump presidency?
Absolutely.
Because of what happened on January 6th, because he says things like, I will be your retribution.
Okay, but that's just rhetoric, and I don't take rhetoric into account.
What else do we have?
Look, Joe Biden says, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. I mean, come on. That's just rhetoric. So I understand that January 6th was the biggest mistake Donald Trump has ever made in his life. And the mistake was that immediately upon the breaking in of the Capitol, Trump should have gone on television and said, knock it off. You shouldn't have waited 3 hours and 15 minutes. That was a huge mistake.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
So we're sort of boiling it down to January 6th and the 3 hours and 15 minutes that he waited. But I want to maybe roll it back further because I don't think January 6th was an aberration. I think it was the culmination of a slow-moving plot. And I'll tell you, the minute he lost the election, he went through every avenue meticulously to try and get that vote overturned.
Right.
He first went to all the states, Nevada, Georgia. I just need 11,000 votes. This was fraud. He went to all the courts. None of it worked. This kept going, and they kept trying to plan. The next step was, let's go to the vice president. The vice president doesn't have to certify it. They tried to make constitutional arguments. Most of his lawyers say, Donald, you lost. This is crazy. This is not constitutional. So what does he do? He lawyer shops until he can find people that are unscrupulous, and then he takes their advice. Now, it comes down to that certification. This has been a process building up since November, right? Pence finally makes it clear, no, I'm going to certify these votes because that's my constitutional duty. And their last minute, last ditch effort is, okay, fine. Then I am going to create enough chaos to get this thing thrown into the House of Representatives. What I'm saying is, it wasn't a 3.5 minute brain fart that Donald Trump went through on January 6th. This was the very intentional, strategic end to a months-long plan by Donald Trump to disregard the democratically elected new president of the United States.
All right.
And overturn it.
I understand your assessment, and I understand why some people agree with you. But I've investigated this thing really thoroughly.
Oh, you had your own January 6th committee.
I have my own abilities and the best staff in the business. All right?
Hey,
okay.
Don't you? Not when my staff.
Well, you do a different thing than I do. So
let's hope so.
What happened was that Donald Trump refused to accept the fact that he lost. That's where you start your investigation. About 2 weeks, maybe 10 days after the vote, I told my audience that there was no massive fraud that could be proven in the election. I lost about 1,000 premium members on BillO'Reilly.com when I said that.
What are you running an OnlyFans over there?
It's no nudity, but close. Okay?
Let's hope.
I knew there wasn't massive fraud, that this Dominion thing, all this was BS, because there wasn't one thing presented by anybody. And Alito, the Supreme Court justice, actually wrote, tell me what you have and we will consider it, because he was in charge of Pennsylvania, Alito. Nothing came forth, so I knew it was BS. But when the run-up to the January 6th thing happened, I also have established beyond any reasonable doubt that Trump was worried things might go south on this. He did not want it. So that they made inquiries to the White House, to the Pentagon, to Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., and to Pelosi to get the Guard in ahead of time, the National Guard. It was rejected. And now we learn from Nancy Pelosi's daughter that she is feeling remorse about rejecting that, Nancy Pelosi.
I'm going to take issue with your characterization.
All right, you
can
take issue, but just listen. This is our investigation.
Yes, that is not what was
you
founded.
You don't have to believe my investigation. This is what we have found out. So,
I'm going to believe the actual investigation.
Okay, you believe what you want, because that's what people do. They believe what they want to believe.
No, I'm not. It's not what I want to believe. It's what was in the report.
Look, there are thousands of reports.
The official government.
There is no official, all right?
Well, the January 6th investigation
committee. And you're telling me that committee is what you're going on? What I believe, and I could be wrong, but very rarely am, is that Trump didn't want this violence. What he wanted was a display, all right, that would convince Americans to back his opinion that the vote was fraudulent. That's what he wanted.
So here's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
I disagree with you that that's what he wanted that day.
That's fine.
I think what he wanted that day was Mike Pence not to certify the election.
That's true.
Right?
And Pence is a hero, by the way, and hasn't gotten the credit that he should get. Pence will go down in history as a hero.
Yeah. I would agree with that in that one instance, but boy, did he enable 4 years of nonsense leading up to that. But beyond that, on that day when he knew, right? So he knew that if he could get the election into the House of Representatives, he had a shot.
Maybe.
That's what he knew.
Maybe. That's what he wanted. That's what he wanted.
And he knew the only way he could do that was for those proceedings not to go forward and for those proceedings to be interrupted.
I think that's accurate. No, but interrupted, he didn't need it. If Pence had cooperated, which...
No, that's what I'm saying. This is, I'm saying, post
the pitchfork
once he
people.
understood.
He didn't need that.
But once, so that's my point. He thought he wasn't going to need it, but he had him there in case.
No, that's ridiculous conspiratorial stuff. Come on, Stewart, that's just conspiratorial stuff. You could never prove that in a court. When you've got Pentagon people raising their right hand and swearing that Donald Trump told them to alert the Pentagon to bring the guard in early, that whole thing just blows up. Now, if you don't want to believe it, you don't want to believe it, but that's on the record.
Yeah.
Come on.
Here's what I'm saying. He said, go down to the Capitol and fight. That's what he said.
And then he said peacefully.
And he knew at that point.
He said peacefully. Come on, you're not even giving the whole picture to the podcast viewers. He said peacefully. Come on.
If I may say so, Bill, that's just rhetoric. And it was very clear to me that
he didn't need it.
Exactly.
He wanted to give them all ARs. He wanted to arm all those people to go down and machine gun everybody who was opposed to him. Not machine gun,
but he wanted the pressure of the people to stop them from certifying that election.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
To the House. Well, that's my whole point.
No, it's not. You're saying that he had nefarious, that he wanted to promote violence. None of that is true.
No. I'm saying his intention was to disrupt.
That's true.
His intention was to disrupt. And it became violent because he was reckless. And that's
that's an opinion that I wouldn't. I don't think that Donald Trump handled that well at all.
I think that is the mildest understatement I have heard about January 6th.
Because you want to hate him, and I want to treat him fairly. That's the difference.
Oh, my Lord. Bill O'Reilly, do I desperately not want to hate him? I don't hate him. I just feel like
here's a litmus test. Would you sit next to Trump at a Knicks game?
I take my son to those, so no, probably not. I only get 2 tickets,
what if he bought the ticket next to you for $8,000?
Not given the damage that I think he's done to the discourse in the country.
See, now I would sit.
That's not hate.
I would sit next to Biden, and I would ask him all his questions.
Well, because Biden hasn't done. I understand that, but that's apples and oranges.
No apples, no oranges. I'll sit next to Biden. And
Biden hasn't violated the one core tenet of our constitutional republic, and that is the peaceful transfer of power. And that's what I would say.
And that's why
to me, that's disqualifying.
And I said this I said this on the Daily Show. That's true. And that's why Trump is in 25% ahead of Biden now. That January 6th is what pulled Trump back.
Oh, I don't.
Final comment. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, so this podcast will probably go on forever because everybody in the world will watch it. And the totalitarian regimes will force people to watch it in China and Russia. They will.
No
and
question.
If you don't, you're going to get in trouble. If Trump would go on Thursday night and say, you know what? I have some of my rhetoric has been extreme and too personal. And based upon what happened to me, I almost lost my life. I'm going to tamp that down. And I'm going to campaign on what I believe I can do for the country. I can improve your life. I'm going to stop the personal stuff. And I hope everybody else follows. If Trump would do that Thursday night, he will win, probably in a landslide in November.
So you're saying if he could come out and go like, I am a completely different person because of this experience.
Maybe not completely because no one's going to buy that, but he has modified a little bit. And he doesn't have to apologize. See, he doesn't have to look weak.
I see.
He just has to say, I see a bigger picture. He just has
to make a strategic pivot without actually having change in his heart.
Oh, see, no matter what he does.
All right, O'Reilly, you're out.
Okay. I want to say that I always appreciate the debate with Jon Stewart. And I think that we built up a legacy here in this country that every other political pundit should follow. And it's fun. It's informative.
It is fun.
And best of all, I'm so much better looking than Stewart. It's really a good contrast.
I don't disagree with that. Thank you very much for being here, Bill. God, that's a lot. I just love the whole, Stewart, January 6th, it was a bad day. It's the Biden, like Trump was jet lagged. He had a cold. 3.5 hours. He should have done it. Like, then it wasn't like the culmination of this gigantic plot to overthrow the electoral Jesus.
I know. On his show, he talks about how calling Trump anti-democracy is hate. And it's like,
And it's just it's a literal fact.
Yeah.
And it's hate. And he sort of blames that on the radicalization, right? Wasn't he saying like MSNBC something? He didn't say it to me. I think he's smarter than, yeah.
Well, I've had the joy of watching his show for the last few days. And
subscriber.
Yeah.
By the way, for those viewers at home, I may not understand, Lauren is our master of understatement. I don't know if you guys might realize she's our dry performer.
Yeah, so I've been on that website, 4,000,001 now from me. And
are you a premium member? Have you jumped on? Have you jumped in?
I want it all.
All right. As you should, Lauren.
It is my right. So he was just going on about how MSNBC is the worst of the worst. And we were talking amongst the staff, like, how is like Abraham Lincoln killed if MSNBC didn't exist? Like, how is MSNBC implicated in this when assassination is not uncommon, or like attempts on the lives of our leaders is not uncommon?
I think you're also forgetting The View, and I think that the View's commentary about McKinley can be directly related to his.
Joy Behar was there talking.
Joy Behar coming out against McKinley and Garfield is what led directly to. It's just wild, man, to listen to. But I got to say, like, always fun to. It's almost like a Thanksgiving in July. It's like that sitting around, because it really is like, because I have family members who, Bill O'Reilly is their patron saint and probably is too soft and liberal for them.
Yep.
O'Reilly, he's a little too conciliatory. And it really does remind you of those conversations, like after the football game, where like finally somebody will turn and be like, so you really want to indoctrinate the children? Is that what you want to do? And you're like, no, that's not what's happening here. But
didn't say that. Yeah, I think this is the first and potentially last episode that my family will listen to. So,
well, I'm sorry they're so disappointed that you work for a communist, but we'll move it along. But great stuff, guys. As always, lead producer Lauren Walker, producer Brittany Mehmetovic, video editor and engineer Rob Vitolo, audio editor and engineer Nicole Boyce, researcher and associate producer Jillian Spear, and executive producers Chris McShane, Katie Gray. This is the weekly show. We will see you next week. I mean, that just makes logical sense.
Yeah. Should we hit him with socials?
Oh, socials. Yes. Brittany, sorry.
Twitter, we are Weekly Show Pod. Instagram and Threads, we are Weekly Show Podcast. TikTok, Weekly Show Podcast. And YouTube, we are Weekly Show with Jon Stewart.
And TikTok especially, because the kids love nothing more than two old men talking over each other. That's
hashtag viral.
Hashtag what's wrong with these people. All right, very good, guys. See you next time. The Weekly Show with Jon Stewart is a Comedy Central podcast. It's produced by Paramount Audio and Busboy Productions.